I still remember the exact weight of that envelope in my hand. Like the paper itself was heavy with bad intent, the kind of weight that makes your stomach drop before your eyes even read a word. It was early, the sun barely up, my work boots still dusty from a job I finished the night before, and I was standing in my driveway in a neighborhood where every lawn looked airbrushed and every smile felt like a performance. The return address said Cedar Ridge Commons HOA, and I actually laughed under my breath because in my head I thought, what now? My trash can offend someone's spiritual journey? Then I opened it, saw the number, and the laugh died in my throat. $5,013.27. For electricity. In a small, modest ranch house where I'm the guy who unplugs the toaster when he's done because my daughter's college fund lives and dies in the margins. I stared so long the ink started to blur, and all I could think was, somebody just tried to steal my kid's future with a stamp and a logo. And here's the part they didn't plan for. I've been an electrician for almost 30 years. I don't just pay power bills. I understand them. I know what normal looks like. I know what fraud smells like. And that morning it smelled like burnt insulation and arrogance. Across the street, the HOA's fancy irrigation system kicked on right on schedule, sprinklers hissing like they were laughing at me, and I felt this calm, cold clarity settle in, the kind that shows up right before trouble. I whispered to myself, okay, you want war, you picked the wrong house. My name's Ethan Cole. I'm not some hotshot. I'm the kind of tradesman who shows up early, keeps his word, and tries to live quiet. 3 years ago, I lost my wife, Claire, to a wreck caused by a kid texting through a red light. 1 second, she was my whole world. The next second, I was standing in a hospital hallway hearing words that didn't make sense, trying to hold myself together for our daughter, Riley, who was 14 then and suddenly looked 10 years older overnight. We got a settlement, enough to breathe, but every dollar felt wrong in my pocket, like it came with ghosts attached. At her funeral, I made a promise I've repeated like a prayer ever since. Riley gets her future, no matter what. That's why I bought in Cedar Ridge Commons, a place that promised safety and community standards, which is HOA language for, we will charge you monthly to police your soul. I picked a smaller house on purpose, nothing flashy, just clean, stable, good schools. For the first few months, it was almost normal. Riley made friends. I grilled on Sundays. The neighbor 2 doors down waved and meant it. Then I met Monica Vale, HOA president, mid-40s, perfect hair, perfect teeth, perfect cruelty. She drove a pearl-white SUV that never had dust on it, and she carried a clipboard like it was a weapon certified by the state. First time I saw her, she smiled like we were friends and said, "Welcome. We're very proud of how we keep Cedar Ridge elevated." Elevated, like the rest of the world, was something she stepped over. A week later, I got my first violation. My work van, parked in my own driveway, was commercial presence. Fine, $150. Processing fee, $25. I paid it, not because I agreed, but because grief makes you tired and tired people avoid fights. Then Riley asked if I could put a small camera by the porch because she hated being home alone after school. I mounted a simple one, nothing crazy, and 2 days later Monica was at my door. Unapproved exterior modification, she said, eyes scanning my house like she was hunting defects. I showed her the bylaws where cameras were allowed. Monica didn't blink. Interpretation is at the board's discretion, she said, like she'd just declared herself the weather. I remember thinking, wow, you're not enforcing rules, you're collecting obedience. So when that $5,013 bill showed up, I knew it wasn't a mistake. It was a move, a flex, a test to see if I'd fold. Riley was at the kitchen table that morning, hair still damp, SAT book open, trying to act like she wasn't scared. She glanced at the number, and her face tightened in a way that broke my heart. "Dad, is that real?" I wanted to lie. I wanted to protect her. But I also wanted her to see something true. "It's real paper," I said, keeping my voice steady. "But that doesn't mean it's real truth." Then another envelope landed the same day, legal letterhead, bold red warnings, 10 days to pay, or they'd place a lien on my property for shared utility overage and repeated covenant violations. Through the window, I saw Monica standing on her front porch with a mug of coffee, watching my house like she was waiting for a show. And in that moment, something snapped into place. This wasn't about my grass height or my camera. This was about money. Big money. and electricity is just money that moves through wire. My old mentor used to tell me, electricity never lies, son, but people will all day. So I stopped reacting, and I started tracing. I went to the county records office and pulled every HOA filing I could, fee changes, utility policies, vendor contracts. The more I read, the uglier it got. A new community energy allocation program, approved without homeowner vote. A temporary emergency authority clause used for non-emergencies. And then I pulled the clubhouse usage history, because if they're claiming shared overage, the common areas should show it. Those numbers weren't just high, they were insane. Like a little clubhouse that hosted bingo nights was suddenly running a machine shop. That's when I called a friend from the utility company, Miguel, a meter tech I'd helped years ago when his mom's place needed rewiring after a storm. We met in a grocery store parking lot, because grown men doing detective work always end up meeting somewhere stupid. I showed him the numbers. Miguel whistled low. "Ethan, that meter reads like it's feeding a commercial load," he said, voice tight. "Not lights in a fridge. Something heavy." We waited until late and walked the property line behind the clubhouse where the landscaping was thick, the kind of decorative hedges meant to hide ugly truths. Miguel's flashlight found the first clue fast, a junction box that didn't belong, new screws, fresh sealant. He popped it open, and I felt my stomach roll. Somebody had installed a bypass and a splitter, sloppy, dangerous work, the kind that starts fires and kills people. Worse, the meter itself showed signs of tampering, not in a subtle, oops way, in a deliberate, we want the numbers to look bigger way. Miguel took photos, hands shaking. "This is felony territory," he muttered. "Someone's stealing power and making everybody pay." And right then, like a bad joke on cue, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. "Pay the balance or prepare to lose your home. 9 days. I looked at Miguel and smiled for the first time in a week. Not a happy smile. You really did that smile. "They just gave me everything I need," I said. The next few days felt like living inside a pressure cooker. Monica didn't just threaten my wallet. She started targeting my life. A city inspector showed up with complaints about unauthorized business operations because I had a workshop corner in my garage with a workbench and some conduit. Riley watched from the hallway, trying to look brave, and I could see the fear flickering behind her eyes like a bad fluorescent bulb. The inspector, a tired man named Darren, tested my setup, saw everything was permitted, grounded, clean. "This is standard residential," he said, almost apologetic. Monica appeared at my gate like she'd been summoned by the smell of potential suffering, wearing her clipboard grin. "Are you sure, Inspector?" she pressed. "We can't have hazards." Darren sighed. "Ma'am, his setup is safer than most homes I inspect." I watched Monica's smile wobble, just a little, and I knew she hadn't expected me to be competent. That was her biggest mistake. People like her thrive on the assumption that you'll panic, you'll beg, you'll mess up. That night, Riley sat beside me at the table while I spread out printed reports and photos. "Dad, why are they doing this?" she asked. I stared at the evidence and felt something bitter rise in my chest. "Because they think they can," I said, "and because nobody's made them stop yet." Then our elderly neighbor, Mr. Halvorson, quiet, polite, the kind of man who always returned your ladder, knocked on my door with a folder clutched to his chest. His wife had passed the year before, and grief has a way of turning some people into archivists. "My Marla kept records," he said softly. She didn't trust Monica. Said something wasn't right. Inside were meeting notes, bank statements Marla had copied when she volunteered as assistant treasurer, and photos taken from her back fence that showed thick power cables running from the clubhouse side toward Monica's property line. It wasn't just a kiln or one appliance. Monica had built a private wellness studio in her garage, infrared saunas, commercial-grade cold plunge systems, and a bank of servers for her online brand she kept bragging about. The load was massive, and she wasn't paying for it. She was spreading it across the neighborhood, then picking a few homeowners to crush with fake overage bills so nobody would look too closely at the books. Mr. Halvorson's voice shook when he said it. Marla wanted to confront her, then she got sick. And I just didn't have the fight in me. Riley looked at him, then at me, and I saw something new in her expression, anger, clean and sharp. "So she's stealing from everyone," Riley said, "and blaming you." I nodded. "That's what bullies do," I said. "They punch you and call it discipline." By day 7, Monica escalated again. Foreclosure paperwork arrived while Riley was minutes away from a scholarship interview call. Timing so cruel, it almost felt artistic. Lien notice. Emergency board assessment. $12,600 in accumulated charges. Riley's hands trembled as she took her call in her room, voice trying to sound confident while her world shook. I read the paperwork and noticed something Monica couldn't fake. Physics and handwriting don't care about intimidation. The meeting minutes listed signatures from board members who were out of town, one recovering from surgery, another who'd asked me to fix a ceiling fan 2 months earlier and admitted she hadn't attended an HOA meeting in years. Forged. Sloppy. Desperate. That same night, Monica's people vandalized my work van, tires slashed clean, and my porch camera caught her face in crisp detail. Monica Vale, HOA president, in a hoodie, creeping like a teenager, committing a felony in my driveway. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt sad, in this weird way, because it was proof she'd crossed from petty tyrant into dangerous criminal, and I knew what that meant. She would burn everything down before she admitted she was wrong. So I made one final plan, and it wasn't revenge, not the kind you see in movies where the hero smirks and the villain falls. It was consequence. I called the utility fraud unit and the fire marshal, handed them Miguel's photos, Marla's records, my camera footage, and a load calculation breakdown that showed the clubhouse lines were carrying a dangerous, code-violating draw. The fire marshal didn't debate. He said one sentence I'll never forget. If this is live, it's an immediate hazard. He issued an emergency order to disconnect power to the clubhouse and any linked equipment until it was inspected and repaired. That order mattered because it meant what happened next wasn't me playing vigilante, it was me following a safety mandate like I've done 100 times on job sites. Friday evening, right as the HOA board was hosting their little community mixer in the clubhouse, the one where Monica liked to stand under chandeliers and pretend she was a mayor. I watched from my truck as the utility crew rolled in, the fire marshal behind them, and Monica's world went dark. The lights blinked once, twice, then died completely. Music cut mid-note. People's voices rose in confusion. And then, I swear to you, I heard Monica scream from inside like someone had snatched her crown. She burst out the doors, heels clicking, phone in hand, face twisted with fury. "What is this?" she shrieked at the crew chief. The crew chief didn't flinch. He held up the posted order. "Fire marshal's directive," he said calmly. "Unsafe load, illegal modifications, potential fire risk." Monica's eyes snapped to me across the lot, and for a second, she looked like she might actually lunge. "You did this," she hissed, voice low now deadly. I walked a few steps forward, kept my hands open, kept my tone even, because nothing scares a bully like calm. "No, Monica," I said. "You did. I just stopped letting you hide it." She started yelling about lawsuits, about defamation, about terrorism, and that's when the fire marshal said, "Ma'am, step back." And the utility investigator asked her a question that made her go quiet in a way I'll never forget. "Why does your property share a load path with the clubhouse main?" Monica blinked, mouth opening, and no words came out. Because there was no lie big enough to cover a wire. 2 weeks later, federal investigators were involved because money and utilities get serious real fast when fraud touches hundreds of households. Monica resigned, then tried to claim she was bullied by a hostile mob, which was almost funny if it hadn't hurt so many people. The HOA's accounts were frozen. Refund checks started going out in waves. A criminal case followed. Theft of services, wire fraud, forgery, intimidation. Riley got her scholarship. The day the acceptance email came, she cried and laughed at the same time, then hugged me so tight I felt my ribs complain. In life, it calmed down. For a while. But here's the part that doesn't fit cleanly in a feel-good ending. Monica didn't get the movie villain punishment. She got a plea deal. She avoided prison time by cooperating, by naming other people, by blaming pressure, by playing the same game she always played. Consequences, but not the kind that matches the damage. Some neighbors were furious. Some felt relief. And I found myself sitting on my porch late one night, the neighborhood quiet, Riley asleep inside, thinking about how close I came to losing everything and how much of it was decided by paperwork and connections and who gets believed. Riley asked me a question the next day that still sits in my chest like a stone. "Dad, if the fire marshal hadn't listened, would you have done something else?" And I didn't answer right away because I didn't want to lie to her, but I also didn't want to teach her the wrong lesson. I finally said, I don't know. I hope I wouldn't. But I know why people feel tempted. And that's the truth that makes people uncomfortable. When the system moves slow, the desire for instant justice starts to look like a solution, even when it isn't. So let me ask you, honestly, where's the line? If someone tried to bury you with fake bills, threatened your home, targeted your kid's future, and you discovered they were stealing from everyone, would you play it proper and trust the process no matter how long it takes? Or do you think there are moments where turning off the lights, metaphorically or literally, is the only thing bullies understand? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me if Monica deserved mercy or a harsher ending. And tell me if you've ever dealt with an HOA tyrant or a petty authority figure who thought you'd be too tired, too broke, or too polite to fight back. And if you're watching this thinking, man, I've seen something like that in my neighborhood, say it out loud down there. Because silence is the wiring that keeps these scams alive.